Yes, this section will be recorded, yes, so that we are able to allow others who are not participating in this event to also be a part of this event after now. So right about now, I will be inviting Miriam to take our presentation. Miriam Kiwan is the head of strategic partnerships at the Abu Dhabi Global Market, ADGM. Miriam Kiwan, you can now take your presentation.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm just going to be sharing my screen, if that's okay, to allow people to, please let me know when you can see my screen. Hello? Can you confirm that you're seeing my screen?
Yes, we can see. Yes, we can see your screen.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miriam Kiwan. As was mentioned earlier, I head strategic partnerships at Abu Dhabi Global Market. Before I start, I'd like to give you an overview for those who are not familiar with Abu Dhabi Global Market or ADGM. Just to give an overview, basically, we are the international financial center for Abu Dhabi. We are based as an offshore jurisdiction. We have around 3,600 entities registered in ADGM, stemming across different sectors, from large financial institutions to asset managers, as well as tech startups. We are what's more important is that we are the first jurisdiction in the MENA region with a direct application of common law. What this means specifically for tech startups in this case, and investors alike, is that you can benefit from a robust and a globally recognized legal and regulatory framework with the additional benefit of full foreign ownership, as well as capital expatriation in a 0% tax environment. And this applies for all businesses registered in the jurisdictions across sectors and across stages, as long as they fit within our legal structures, of course. And apologies, I realized I didn't move my slide. So as I said, it is well positioned as a jurisdiction to support Abu Dhabi's positioning sort of an economic development. And we do pride ourselves of for being one of the leading fintech hub as well in the region. The ADGM has been recognized specifically within the fintech space as a leader with its progressive regulatory frameworks, which includes the first comprehensive crypto asset framework globally, not just regionally, as well as the first regulatory digital sandbox in the MENA region, just to name a few of these award-winning sort of initiatives. More recently, in 2018, the center has basically introduced a startup framework which focuses specifically on building strategic partnerships to develop the Abu Dhabi ecosystem, specifically the tech ecosystem, and complement that and anchor that with the strong regulatory framework and legal framework that we have here. Today, we're proud to host over 300 tech startups specifically. Over 100 of them are benefiting already from government incentives. And we're also proudly the home of Hub 71, if some of you have already came across this. Hub 71 is a leading tech ecosystem supporting tech founders across different priority sectors, from health tech to ed tech to fintech, etc. The other thing I'd like to mention is that in addition to having tech startups, the venture capitalists, as well as the government support based here, we also have ecosystem developers such as accelerators, incubators, as well as startup studios based here. And just to name a few of these, we have the likes of Plug and Play, the likes of Techstars, as well as many others sort of based here to support both the founders as well as the ecosystem developers that are based within our ecosystem. Just to describe a little bit more, going back to what makes ADGM so different, we have three different authorities, what we call independent authorities. The first one is our Financial Services Regulatory Authority, and this entity specifically focuses on advocating progressive financial services environment while upholding the integrity of our center by supporting and facilitating financial services activities in ADGM. The second authority we have is called the Registration Authority. This is more of an efficient registration and incorporation and licensing entity that supports the onboarding of our clients. And the third authority, which is very important, and this is how our differentiation is also anchored under this, is the ADGM court. This is where we basically focus on applying the English common law platform, of course, and with that, the court is also supported by the arbitration center. I'd also like to highlight that we have the first digital court in the world in ADGM, which has been launched about three or 4 years ago already. Some of the clients that we have in the center includes the big names that you probably are already familiar with, from as I mentioned, the Plug and Play, the City, the Cleveland Clinic. So we, as you can say, we cover different sectors, from anything from corporates to banking to defense to service providers to tech startups. We also have a few tech startups that have moved their global headquarters to ADGM, not only regional. And probably if you're familiar with the market here in UAE, you probably would have read about the Angami, which is the music streaming platform for the region. They have not only moved their headquarters to Abu Dhabi, they also launched a SPAC, IPO through a SPAC in the US as well. We do have other examples. With that, I would close my presentation. I wanted to keep it very, very high level and short, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Any questions so far?
Do we have any questions? Any questions for Miriam? Any questions so far? All right, I guess we don't have questions for now, Miriam.
That's great. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you so much for that session.
All right.
Okay. Next up, we will have Fola Aedo and Richen. I will just do a brief read of their profile. Richen is the co-founder of Clever Corp and a certified tax consultant with over 10 years experience in the Middle East finance markets, the banking industry, and global corporate tax. She's an experienced private banker and tax consultant, and has previously worked with the National Bank of Dubai, the UAE, and the UAE Federal Tax Authority. Uri has helped hundreds of Chinese entities set up businesses in the UAE, has provided tax consultancy to government entities and private companies. She's also the founder of Tax Tech and currently manages Clever Corp's operations globally. Fola Aedo is currently the General Manager, Africa, and partner of Clever Corp. She has a proven management record of 15 years as a corporate strategist and marketing professional. In the course of her career, she has held leadership and transformational roles with globally recognized companies, including Procter & Gamble, Diageo in Nigeria, and Dubai. Driven by our belief in the potential for African investors to harness value through international expansion, Fola has helped set up businesses for many investors, setting up in the UAE as a gateway connection for the Middle East and the Asian markets. Fola Aedo and Richen, you're welcome. Please take your session now.
Thank you. I'll just be sharing the screen now. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. So we'll be taking you through today just perhaps more of a background on who we are at Clever Corp and exactly what we do. As we are speaking to potential investors looking to move into the UAE, one of the things we also want to do is just talk about why work and live in UAE, like what are the benefits of this. We're also going to talk about why we believe people should invest in the UAE and why this and what the UAE investment landscape currently looks like, and just what the government policies are for the future and what the outlook is for this region. Then we'll talk about the entry pathways to moving your business and your family potentially and yourself to the UAE, as well as opening a bank account in UAE and the financial regulations. I will be going through the first 5 sections, and then my partner Rui will take us on the financial parts, which include the opening a bank account and discussing the financial regulations. And then we can take any questions you might have on this and also on ADGM if any come up at that point. So who are we? At Clever Corp, what we do is we're UAE-based company setup and advisory firm, and we support our international client base looking to move their businesses or invest in the UAE. We provide end-to-end services from helping our clients identify suitable investment options to customized migration pathways for their business as well as personal needs. We do company registration as well as UAE residence visa processing, bank account opening assistance, and we also provide business support services in form of accounting and tax processing. What we do, again, UAE company setup, residence visas, accounting and VAT, and business support services for bank account assistance opening, HR and office leasing solutions are also included in our business support services, which we offer to partners on a monthly package basis, especially when people first move into the UAE and they're looking to keep things sort of lean and tight. Then we offer just like a mobile or virtual office package that helps manage this as well. So why invest in the UAE? I mean, the first thing we always say is the UAE dirham is pegged to the US dollar, which means that an investor investing in this is able to diversify their portfolio and also hedge against currency depreciation. In the UAE, we have no personal income tax or capital gains or withholding tax, which is also a great incentive for living here. There are hassle-free international remittances for expatriates living here to remit their earnings wherever they feel like. There is also investor residence visa options for multiple business activities. So whatever your business activity, it's very likely that we'll be able to find a jurisdiction or a business setup zone that offers that. Again, no property taxes or duties, unlike several other global real estate investment destinations, which you might be considering. Why open a company specifically in the UAE? The UAE has a great business-friendly environment. We have here today with us from ADGM, the head of entrepreneurship, and that's just an example of how open the UAE government and regulators are to supporting entrepreneurs and startups looking to move to this region. There's lots of policies and regulations that are business-friendly, and this is such a dynamic market that the UAE is constantly coming up with new and innovative ways to encourage and support SMEs and entrepreneurs in any sector. With the UAE, we now have the option of 100% ownership, whether on the Dubai mainland or in any of the free zones. And the free zones promote ease of doing business internationally as well, especially for those who might have a sort of export-based business. There is, of course, the state-of-the-art infrastructure for a business to set up, from Wi-Fi to everything that you need. Even in the free zones, you're able to get a package that allows you to also have a flexi desk and just receive your emails and work from there as you please. Again, the government has numerous stimulus plans for entrepreneurs, and they're always getting constantly updated. And of course, the 0% corporate income tax. So I will take you through what the UAE investment landscape has looked like post-COVID, which of course is very important because while many countries are struggling to get back on their feet, the UAE has shown strong results in the first half year of 2021, with MENA startups attracting over $1 billion, which is a 64% year-on-year growth, and UAE deals specifically were over $700 million. The fintech sector led the way with over $200 million invested in the same period, and UAE and Saudi Arabia accounted for over 60% of this MENA fintech funding. There is currently, what we're seeing is an influx of international investors and VC firms who are setting up regional offices and also deploying capital into startups. In this same period, about 38% of investment into the region came from outside investors and VCs. The UAE also has released recently an entrepreneurial nation plan, which aims to become the home to 20 unicorns by 2031. And in this 10-year plan, the government will be deploying a 1 billion dirham SME fund to spur the sector and to offer funding options to startups. So this is just an example of what it looks like to be in the space in the UAE as a startup, and what kind of support and what kind of ecosystem you would be looking at if you were to set up your company here. I will talk about the entryway pathways into the UAE. What are the entryway pathways and how does this fit into perhaps your plan to come into the UAE? The first one is to go through what kind of residence visa options there are. So the three main residence visa pathways are the business investor visa, which is what you get when you set up a company, and you can do this as a freelancer. You can set up a proper company with your employees, and your families can also be brought in on this business investor visa. It also offers residency for immediate family members, including spouses, children, and parents. The second option is a property investor, where if you purchase property with a minimum equity of about $230,000, then you get the property investor 3-year visa, which is renewable every 3 years as long as your investment remains in the country. And of course, we've recently had the introduction of the golden visa, which offers 5-year and 10-year long-term visa plans, but with a higher investment requirement attached to this. Again, also renewable at the expiration as long as your investment remains in the country. So when it comes to setting up your company, one of the things that perhaps get to be confusing here is you'll hear talks about free zones, mainland, and offshore. And just to give you a clear view of what it looks like if you were to set up your company there. The free zones are designated areas, some of them specific to a type of business sector, where you're able, for example, Dubai commodities free zone, where you're able to set up your company and you have 100% foreign ownership. But there is a limitation on where you can trade or do business, as this is for companies looking to do businesses internationally. And then there's the Dubai mainland company. This also now offers 100% ownership, and it has restrictionless trading. So with this license, you're able to open a physical office, for example, if you're into general trading, and you're able to do business directly with companies, not only in the other free zones, but also in Dubai. With the free zones, you would be able to do business with companies in free zones and internationally. And of course, then there's the offshore jurisdiction where you also have 100% ownership and you have 100% tax and duty exemption. We have a number of offshore zones as well. And the next part of this will be on the finance, how to open a bank account and what the financial regulations look like here. Rui will be taking you through that.
Hi everyone, this is Rui. Thanks for having me today. So we are gonna be talking about the bank account opening inside of UAE. So as we see on these slides, as Clever Corp, we will provide the service to assist our clients to open bank account, which is a personal bank account as well as a corporate bank account. So for both type of accounts, document requirement is a bit different. As per the personal bank account, it's depend on the UAE residence visa tabs. So if you are holding investor visa, you are the company owner, which is you have to open the self-employed account. If you are the employee getting the salary, which is you have to open the employee account. The family members also can open unemployed account, which is a student visa or husband-wife visa. For the corporate bank account, they also have different categories. So recently, UAE launched the online instant bank account, which is we can assist you to open online directly. Secondly, we will be open the bank account with AED currency only, with some high risk investment business activity. They only provide part of bank. They only provide AED currency only. The third one, we can assist the customer to open bank account with AED as long as foreign currency, like USD, Euro, and GBP. So we have to know the regulators in the UAE financial market. So the regulators which we have is UAE Central Bank, DIFC, ADGM, and the UAE Ministry of Finance. Depend on the different business activity and business jurisdiction, you have to get certain approval from those regulators to get your license. For the tax, the tax treatment of financial service sector are VAT exempt, which means if you are dealing exchange of currency, you are running some saving or current account, or you are transfer the bonds or securities, those kind of transaction is VAT exempt, so it's no tax apply on this. We all know there's a 5% VAT, value adding tax. They only available on the service fee. The one more topic regarding the cryptocurrency. So now the cryptocurrency related license is available on UAE, which is a customer can apply the virtual asset management license or crypto asset exchange license. Customer can apply in UAE financial free zone or mainland, but certain approval required, like ICA approval. So if I have any question, you can raise now.
Hi, hi everyone.
Hi. Hi, Tommy.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I have a quick question. It's just around if you have a residence visa, is there a minimum period you're expected to stay in the city?
For the residence visa, you have to visit UAE in 6 months. So each 6 months you have to visit in UAE, but you don't have the period which you have to stay inside of UAE.
Okay, so that means you have to visit UAE at least twice a year.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Good morning. There's a question on the chat that says, please shed more light on the 0% corporate and income tax. Is that forever or for a period of time?
Okay, for so far in the UAE and GCC, especially in the UAE, the corporate income tax is not yet implemented. So as of now, still doesn't implement. So maybe in the 3 years we didn't have any corporate income tax. So the tax only we have is VAT, value adding tax, and import tax. The customer.
Okay, thanks. I'm not sure, maybe I missed it, but what's like the cost requirements, whether it's the ADGM, are there similar cost implications, whether it's the UAE or ADGM, but what exactly is the cost implication of starting your business in either of the zones?
The best free zone, to be honest, in UAE for the financial sector, one is ADGM, which is based in Abu Dhabi. Another one is DIFC, which is based in Dubai. The both zone is almost the same. The cost is also, similar. But as we believe now the ADGM has more support to the entrepreneurs and startups.
And if I hear you correctly, you're probably also just trying to get a ballpark figure of what this looks like.
Yes.
Yeah. So for a Dubai mainland company, for example, the fees would rack up to about $9,000, which would include the company setup license fees as well as the investor 3-year visa. In the UAE, the company trade license needs to be renewed annually. That could come to about $3,000. But like we said, this is 0% corporate tax, and essentially the only fees you would expect every year annually as an investor is your trade license fees, and every 3 years you would renew your visa. But there are some subtleties to the fees. For example, free zones are cheaper to register, some of them from about $6,000, but this also depends on your business activity. And usually when we're advising an investor on the kind of license to get, we make it clear that it's perhaps not best to just look at the direct bottom line, but to also look at what you intend to do long-term with your business. Because while it may be cheaper to register in Ras Al Khaimah, Emirates Free Zone, for example, if you wanted to get contracts in Dubai, then that would make it difficult. And it would only be about $2,000 difference. Anyway.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry, my Zoom just froze for a while. Yeah. Do we have any other questions? Any other questions about all that has been said today?
I can see some questions here, so I'm just gonna perhaps go through some of the questions you put in the chat box. So there was a question about, with increased number of African startups expanding to the Middle East, what mistake do you see the startups make and what advice would you give them? That's a great question. And I think perhaps it goes to the same conversation I had about where to incorporate. So, I mean, just factually speaking, as an African startup entry into the Middle East, you want to get some sort of validity to your business enterprise. And I would usually recommend registering in the right free zone or Dubai mainland for this. Sometimes people go with the cheapest option and they get a trade license, which makes it difficult even to get a bank account, because free zone companies, for example, have so little regulation that some banks, of course, would hesitate to give a bank account with foreign currency facility or any loan facilities to a free zone company. Whereas with a Dubai mainland company, which is slightly more expensive, there's a requirement to have in the package a Dubai office, even if it's just a flexi office, which gives you a physical address where the banks can do bank inspections, can see your trade license, and it gives more comfort when it comes to banking relationships. This also goes for partnerships across the city. It makes a difference where you are registered and how you're incorporated. I can see there's a question about, are there any compromises that African startups expanding to the Middle East need to make in their product, business model, or strategy to stay compliant and thrive in the region? I would say not. And the UAE especially is a peculiar city because this is a place where 90% of the population are expatriates. So there is no dominant need to perhaps convert your product or your business model to fit just one nationality, because it's such a mix of places and people that you will find your own market that fits your own product and business model as is. Of course, there are some tweaks perhaps to culture. Maybe Arabic culture can be more reserved, can be more conservative. There will be slight tweaks. But in general, I would say the one thing that the UAE is the place to thrive if you have the will and the desire to do so. And we've seen this in the rise in the number of expatriate billionaires in the region, where we had up to 10 expatriate billionaires that became so in the same markets, from India, from Pakistan, from the UK, not from here. So it's a great opportunity. The government is offering incentives to everyone in general. And there is a big drive towards entrepreneurship, bringing more entrepreneurial companies to the UAE, as well as tech and fintech companies. I hope that answers that question. And that's it from the chat. Miriam has had to drop off. She's the one that took the questions on ADGM, but for anyone looking to find out more about that, you can drop some questions here in the chat and we will also get back to you directly on that.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? Questions regarding how to set up your business in the UAE and the PECs? Okay, I think Miriam had given some clarity on, or some context on cryptocurrency-based companies in the UAE. So maybe I will just ask, are there any things to look out for in terms of red flags? We all know the dispute around cryptocurrency in the world right now. Some countries are advocating for national cryptocurrency base, while some are adverse to cryptocurrency. So in the UAE, are there any red flags with regards to the registration, aside from registration with the regulator? When I mean the regulator, I mean like the CAC in Nigeria. I mean registration with the finance regulator, like the CBN in Nigeria.
So this is perhaps the opposite of that situation, where the government is directly embracing this new sector and is even now currently introducing new ways and options to simplify the registration and incorporation of cryptocurrency businesses and services. The UAE doesn't accept or recognize the cryptocurrencies as a legal tender, but it has no issues with cryptocurrency companies. And we're still expecting, I think, in December, a new license that also even makes it simpler for freelance or perhaps just a single crypto trader to register their own license. So there's more coming up on that to spur the sector rather than, I guess. I hope that answers the question. We saw something on, we will just take the question on double taxation.
Yeah, regarding this one, Nika was asking, is there any regulation governing the incorporation of subsidiaries in other countries? And what are taxation or double taxation implementation for this? So if my understanding is correct, you want to ask if the subsidiaries inside of UAE, if they will be facing any double. Okay, if you have in your own country, so in here, so for the UAE, you don't need to pay any taxation, which is conformed. But for all the banking and for the government sector, you have to fill up the CRM. So for the CRM global tax, I think you have to pay those tax for your country.
But not on the business you're doing within the UAE, unless your country requires that. As I know the US requires US citizens to pay income tax, for example, even outside. So they're the only country or nationals that have to pay income tax as well here because it's required by the country.
Is there any information you can please share on the sandbox, on the digital sandbox, and then can foreign businesses that set up in the UAE participate in that?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I don't know.
Well, the mention of a digital sandbox that startups can participate in, I don't know if it was you or Miriam that spoke about it. So I was wondering what are the requirements for being a part of that sandbox, since most of our clients are tech companies. Some of them are already, some of them have their businesses participating in the CBN sandbox here in Nigeria. And will want to take advantage of the opportunity as well when they're working on novel innovations. So what are the requirements? Is it just setting up and being a UAE company, or are there any specific regulations that govern how a tech startup can be a part of the sandbox?
Sure. So Miriam had to drop off for another meeting, but I have definitely taken note of this, and she'll probably just share more details like in the exact requirements to take part in the digital sandbox. But government initiatives and ADGM support and all those things are applicable to the companies who are registered in ADGM in general. But I will get you more specific details. That's for Audrey, right? Yes, we'll just be responding with the specific details once we get that from you. I'll drop her a message on.
All right, thanks.
Which is, I guess, another question, which kind of takes us to the question on what are some of the pitfalls we could see African companies getting into here. And one of them would be not understanding exactly where to register and where is the best place to register. So people sometimes come to me and say, I just want to register in Ajman because I heard it has cheap license fees, but then it doesn't have any advantage to your company type registering there. Whereas if you were a tech company, even Dubai Silicon Oasis could have incentives for you there versus where you are now. So that would be a good watch out to really understand not just your current business model, but what you intend to achieve here in the long term before you go into your business activity license and registration jurisdiction.
And I guess relating to the question Nika asked as well, what is repatriation of funds like? You know, most of the strategy for most of our companies that have their parent company outside Nigeria is they have the holdco in another country, and then they have subsidiaries in different African countries. And of course, funds need to pass from the parent company to the subsidiaries and from the subsidiaries back to the parent companies. There's that repatriation of funds in and out. So what's the repatriation environment like in the UAE in general, in Dubai?
Okay. So first of all, in Dubai, they don't have transaction limited. So you can do the transaction except to go to the sanctioned country. So they don't have daily limit, first of all. And secondly, the foreign company or subsidiary, the profit can parking on the Dubai corporate account, and you don't need to pay the corporate tax in Dubai for UAE government. But UAE government will be reporting those kind of data during the CRS. So should be the global tax, the exchange information will be reporting those information to the home country.
Okay, thanks.
I guess the only other question then, sorry, was if you are trying to transfer back to a home country, then the only place where there could be hassles perhaps is if your home country itself has regulations that prevent this. But the UAE itself has no issues with repatriation of funds, except for sanctioned countries.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, I do. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, how's it going? I had a question around employing people. So I know that you had mentioned the residence visa will be for obviously spouse and close family. But is there anything that covers like bringing your team if you sort of relocate your business to the UAE? Is there a separate visa or is everyone under the registration visa? How does that happen?
Okay, so an employee visa is a bit different. Yes, there is an employee visa package and you can bring your team here, as many as you want, as long as you're able to create a labor contract on the Labor Department website to show what they're coming to do, their packages and all that, which we also process. And we also process residence visas, not just for employees, but also for their families who might also need to be relocated with them. So the whole team and their families can essentially come here. As long as we have all the information on the company itself, of course, source of funds and what you do and what your employees will be coming to work on here.
Okay, so as a follow-on to that, is there a limit to the number of employees you can sponsor with an employee visa? And is there maybe some criteria, maybe turnover of the company or something, anything related to that?
Okay, regarding this question, so there's you have to apply the labor quota. So how much employee you want to hiring depend on your office space. So if you want to having the 5 or 6 employee, you have to provide certain tenancy contract for your office. Then the government will be give you the quota to have give you a quota to apply the employee visa. So basically, it's depend on your office space.
And you can expand your quotas if at some point, of course, you're looking to expand your team, but the government would still need to assess your office space requirements for bringing in these people to work here.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? I do not see any other questions in the chat box.
And just to, in case there are no other questions anyway, what I was going to say is that one of the things we do at Clever Corp is just one-to-one consultations when you know that you are looking to move into the UAE. Because as much as we can have general conversations here, most of what we will recommend, the free zone, the trade license type, the packages you should take for the office space will all depend a lot individually on what each company is looking to achieve and what sector they're in. So even after this call, we can drop our email addresses and we're happy to take direct questions and to set up consultations if anyone would like to proceed with. Yes.
All right, thank you so much for that.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Any questions? Any other questions before we wrap it up?
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I have one more.
All right.
It has to do with the with the residency thing. Is there a limit to how many days you have in a year you have to spend in the UAE if you have a UAE residency? Or because I asked because I know some businesses who will be outside the UAE and they'll have maybe like a holding company or something in the UAE, and they would obviously be traveling over to their operational offices most times. So I just want to know if there's an immigration requirement for how many days a year you have to spend in the UAE.
No, so there isn't a fixed number of days you have to spend, but you do have to enter the UAE once every 6 months. So it could literally be like a hop, step, skip out of the country, as long as you're stamping in to retain your residence. And even if you do exceed the 6-month stop, it's not necessarily like, oh, you can't reapply. It just means you will have to go through the slight hassle of renewing it, which perhaps they don't want to do. And some people, knowing that as a CEO, they're not going to want to do this travel often, also opt not to take a residence visa at the point, but to appoint a manager and then get the manager the visa on behalf of the company so the manager can execute here on their behalf. But if the CEO does want a visa, then yeah, they would need to stop in just during this period. I also just got just an update from Miriam on the sandbox, digital sandbox. And she says, as long as the company has a fintech solution that you want to test, you can apply with the regulator and just follow the process. But she will be sharing a link, which I will pass on to TLP and they can share with everyone for whoever is interested in applying. But there's no limitations to who can apply as long as you fit the requirements for the companies they want to.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Any comments? Any additions? Okay. All right then. In the absence of no comments and questions, I think we can wrap this up. For our esteemed guests and clients, if you are interested in setting up your business in the UAE, you can reach out to us. We'll do well to link you up with the good guys at Clever Corp. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Miriam, Ray, and Fola. You guys are doing an amazing job. Thank you to the TLP team and to everyone who took time out to be a part of this series. You should know that this is just the first, and then we will continue to bring to you very interesting and informative series like this to ensure that you get your business where it's meant to be. So thank you so much. We're closing this now and look forward to seeing everyone at the next series. Some other time we'll communicate that to you subsequently. Thank you so much, guys, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.